anybody who's joined till this point, we are now starting our first module, which is called American Revolution. The introduction part is clear. You all have agreed to tell me from time to time if it is making sense or not, and you will basically tell me to repeat if you don't follow. But there will be multiple revisions in the class. Let us now how to go with revision. Tulsi, first learn something, then we'll talk about revision. I will tell you what to do with it. Don't worry. For history, I will tell you how to revise. Everything I will tell you. First, learn. Concentrate. No, let's not jump the gun. Patience. Patience and trust. On everything in the world is based on these two things. And I will promise you that by the time you come out of these 36 hours or 35 hours, you will have a better understanding of the West, of the Americans, of the British, of what happened in Europe, and generally how it is connected to our history in modern India. Because we tend to see modern India in isolation. It is not in isolation. Every event which happens in India had a very important world history context. Therefore, your modern India becomes better. Okay, now we start our discussion from this point forward. So at 6:31, we start our discussion. And our discussion is basically going to be about American Revolution. Now, the problem with teaching you American Revolution is UPSC wants me to say, for example, randomly say, so there were 13 colonies of the Americans. As you know, the British colonized the American continent, and therefore the American Revolution started in the British colonies of America. But the problem in that whole statement is that in that statement, I presumed 5 to 6 very important things. I presumed 5 to 6 very important things. That what is colonization? What is the concept of American continent? Was there something before in this American continent? What is this British colonization? Were the British the only one? This is the problem. If you go by any other form of video, any other form of resource, or any other form of way of teaching, there's a presumption that you understand what is this concept of New World. But I won't do that. Let's do one thing. Let's go through a certain process which happened in Europe. Though it is not part of your syllabus, it is basically optional level, but it will be important for your understanding and understanding a very important concept which developed in 1492. So let's try to do one thing. Let's not presume anything. Let's not presume anything. Let's start from scratch. Now, Kiran, we are starting now. Pay attention. From this point forward, pay attention. So if I pick up any book from Europe in 1400, a book written in 1400 from Europe, it will refer to 3 areas in the world. It will refer to what is called Old World, which is basically Europe. It will also refer to another continent, which is Africa. And then it will refer to a very big continent, which is called Orient. Orient would be India and China. Now, can anybody tell me what is the connection between these 3 continents? Why is that these 3 continents were so easily known to the Europeans? Very good, trade. But yes, Shashank, very good. They have, yes, Shashank, very good. They have a land connection. Basically, you can move between these continents with a certain amount of not going into the high seas, but crossing certain amount of smaller seas or water bodies. These 3 are in a way land connected. Specifically, Europe and the Orient are having a silk route, as we know, and therefore, yes, they are colonies, but we are not talking about colonies. We're talking about 1400. We're talking about the fact that these three continents in a way have a land route connecting each other, and you don't have to go too far beyond into the water body to actually reach Africa also. So very simply, these three continents were known to the Europeans. This is a very Eurocentric approach we are taking. So they were known to the Europeans. But if the Europeans thought that this is the world, are they missing something? Are they missing something in this picture? What are they missing? What are they missing? Very good. They are missing one whole set of continents which we call as the Americas. North and South America. Now, North and South America, according to the Europeans, before 1492, never existed. Australia and all, don't worry, Palak. The point is that just next to Europe, across the Atlantic Ocean, there were the Americas. But for the Europeans, before 1492, there was nothing on the other side. And it is only after 1492 that a person called Christopher Columbus went across the Atlantic Ocean and came back, and they now named it the New World. Now, one of you asked a very good question, Shambhavi, why, sir? And that is why I'm trying to, and that is what we're trying to answer. Why is that the Europeans would never venture across the ocean to go and see to the what is beyond the Atlantic Ocean? And what changed in 1492, 1493 that the New World was discovered? Now, a very important point I want to discuss with you here is, if a European says that I am the Prime Minister of India, does it make me the Prime Minister of India? No. Same way, they call it the New World. But it wasn't something new. It was always there. There were multiple civilizations such as the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas. But the basic point is, for the Europeans, it is a new world. They were the old world. This was the new world. Now, the question remains is, what changed in 15th century that allowed for the people to cross over the Atlantic Ocean? Some of you have already tried to answer this question, and the answer which you are giving is, for example, shipbuilding. Ottomans had blocked trade. Sure, fall of Constantinople, but that would affect India route, not America route. The question is, why did they not have the courage to go into the water? Very good, Abhishek. We not go into the water too far off, and that can only be explained if we go to 14th century Europe. Can we go to 14th century Europe? Can we sit in our time machine and go to this point, and I can then explain everything to you? A lot of you know what is the flat earth concept, but there's a much bigger story behind that. Let's try to understand it. Okay. Yes, they believed the earth was flat, but why did they believe the earth is flat is much more important. That's a what we call as response. That's a product. We need to understand the cause. Okay. Yes, the notion that the earth is flat is the concept. Yes. Due to churches, ocean, we are coming to that. Yes, you're right. Okay. Can we start our discussion with regards to 14th century Europe? Everybody is okay with this space. Everybody is following what we are doing. Yes. Okay. Now, one thing very, very important. What I am going to teach you now is basically Renaissance, Reformation, modern, what we call as rise of modern sciences, scientific revolution, and then what we call as age of discovery. All of this is basically out of your syllabus because this is not part of the 18th century events. But all of this is something which you need to understand, and you only need to understand the basics. So I'm not going to go into them in detail. I will only tell you how they're important to our story. Okay. So let's try to understand how 14th century, 13th century, 14th century Europe used to look like. And at this point of time, there used to be a system which you would have heard for sure in your life, which is called feudalism. This is the original form of feudalism, which is the fact that the society was divided in a certain way. You have the king at the apex, which is at the top. Thereafter, under the king, you have what are called knights or soldiers. Under the soldiers, you have landlords. From this topic, no mains question. Yes, only for understanding. Yes, Pala. Perfect. Yes, only for understanding. Sometimes you have to do that only for understanding. Mains question from Renaissance will not come in GS level. It can come in optional, not here. Okay. Landlords, or what we call as vassals. And then you have what we call as bonded labor, which we call as serfs. I will discuss what is Renaissance Hariom. Don't worry. Don't again jump the gun. Everything will be explained to you. Please be with me right now. This is how the society was divided: king, knight, landlord or vassal, and bonded labor. So basically, the society was hierarchical, and the king used to control the knights used to control the vassals, and the vassals used to control bonded labor. This is called a decentralized model of control, wherein the king does not control the people, he rather controls the soldiers control the labor, landlords, the landlords control the basic unit of labor, which is serfs. But there's also one more actor which is not part of this structure but is very, very important, which is the church, and which we call as the Pope. So you know that the Pope, or the clergy, as a lot of you pointed out, very good, clergy. The Pope basically is the religious head of all Christians in Europe as of right now. And clergy is basically church bureaucracy. So you would know, for example, bishop, archbishop, what we call as dukes, for example, priest. Priest is the slowest. Priest, bishop, archbishop, grand duke, thereafter pope. Pope is the highest position. Basically, the church also has positions through which you go up. For example, again, cardinal. So you have priest, cardinal, bishop, archbishop, pope. So we have multiple positions. Don't have to learn it. But the point is, the church is a very important institution at this point of time. And the beauty of the church at this point of time was it had direct control over the king. And more than that, the church very decisively controlled knowledge system, society, and ideas about our surrounding. See, very simply, the church controls everything. When will you get up? When will you sleep? Can you marry? Can you not marry? Can the king marry? Can the king not marry? Very simply, the king was not independent here. The church had a lot of control over the king, and therefore the king always used to listen to the pope in that regard. And the church controlled knowledge system means that education was controlled by the church. Here, the king should not be called a puppet, but he still is a puppet in the hands of the church for sure. The point is that the church, though it is not part of the state, still controls a lot of smaller details of day-to-day living. But for you and me and for our discussion right now, It controlled education. It controlled education. So you tell me that if the church says that the earth is a cylinder, and if I say no, the earth is flat, will the church allow my understanding to exist? No, no. Very simply, the church will always try to propagate and control its own understanding. And if I disagree with the church, I will be either burnt alive or will be called a person who has challenged the authority of the divine Lord. So it's blasphemy that I have basically challenged the Lord, the Savior, God, and therefore I should be killed. So now the point is, the question which came to your mind and my mind also, why is that the church, or why is that the Europeans were not very comfortable going too far into the sea or any water body, was because the church at this point of time propagated what is called the flat earth concept. So according to the church, in 14th-15th century, the earth was not a geoid or a sphere. Rather, it was a flat earth. And according to them, the earth was basically surrounded by a dome in which the moon and the sun used to go up and down. Used to go up and down. And this is 13th, 14th century Europe. And imagine how dumb these Europeans could be, that we had Bhaskara, we had Aryabhatta, we had multiple astrologers telling us they are basically calculating the circumference of the earth, the distance to the sun. And these dumbfounded Europeans believed that the earth was flat. But unfortunately, because we came under the domination of these dumbfounded Europeans, that we had to actually learn these things again from their perspective. So according to the church, if you go too far out into the ocean, you will fall off the edge of the earth. How did they come up with this concept? Because that is the only thing which the church could understand. Ilma, you stand on the road. Does the earth seem for, or does the earth look like a sphere to you? When I'm standing, or when you are sitting on the ground right now, does it actually turn out to be the curvature of the earth is visible to you? Yes or no? Can you see the curvature of the earth sitting? No. For the church, a priest sat and said, "Seedha hai, flat." So everything is flat. So these people thought that the earth was flat. That the earth was flat. And now, if I will say no, the earth is not flat, I'll be burnt. So very simply, 13th, 14th century Europe, people are scared to go into the ocean too much. And the simple straightforward point is, let's quantify the power of the church. The church's power at this point of time was close to 100% over education and over the knowledge system. Now, one of you asked me, I think Shambhavi asked me this question, why is that, sir, nobody wanted to go too much into the ocean? And why is that it is only in 15th century that things started to change? But to answer that question, do you understand why they did not have the courage to go across the ocean? This is the first point you need to understand. Why European gave monopoly to Pope Kishan? It's not like that. Religion is how it dominates. You will see there will be changes in Europe, but at this point in time, religion dominates because religion is the way it understands power and how people understand society. So they could fall off the edge of the earth. Sure, yes. So first things first, why there was no exploration before the events which I am going to discuss with you? Do we understand that? Was in Pope, it was hierarchical, somebody appointed him. Tulsi, he's appointed from within, but is of no purpose to you, that discussion. He's appointed from within. It's not hierarchical, they're elected from within. Okay, yes, religion dominated the past. Till today, religion dominates you. Very simply, religion dominates till today. Doesn't religion dominate you today? Maybe not in urban areas, in rural areas, it still dominates. So, religion dominates is a standard thing. Okay. Okay. Henry the Navigator will come to, don't worry about that. You're moving forward in the story. Church controls mind. Okay, now 14th century Europe, anybody has any issue. What is going to happen, I'm going to tell you. Anybody has any issue in church's authority. How does the church come through? Where does it come from? That is called rise of mod west. That is of no purpose to you. We're not going to the story of dark ages. That is European history, proper European history. This is what you need to know. That is it. I'm not going to give you unnecessary information. I'm not a person who wastes time of the students. Every minute is important. Can we discuss what changes in Europe which allows for things to change in the people? Okay, good. Now, 14th century Europe looks like this. King, knight, vassal, serf. Church has too much power. It controls. Hariom asked the question. Church has too much power. It controls society, knowledge, and ideas. And very simply, the church believes that the earth is flat, so people would not explore too much. And the kings are controlled very socially, not maybe not politically, but socially, through their rituals, and their way of living was controlled by the church. Okay. Difference between church and clergy. Church is the institution, clergy is the institution's bureaucracy. Okay. If, as per Pope, river water used to fall from the edge. Again, Hardik, as you know, this actually makes no sense. Flat earth theory doesn't make sense. Your logic is totally correct. But I challenge you to go and say to the Pope that you are dumb and that the river water will fall off the edge of the earth. You will most probably be killed in saying this, because the church will never challenge its own authority. Logic is something which does not exist as of right now. Okay. Now there will be a set of changes which will come out of this system, and everything which I'm going to discuss with you is only for context and understanding. Now please try to understand. There will be a chain of events which will take away the power of the church, and that will allow for something called the scientific revolution to happen. But in order to understand that, let's try to understand the first process which basically created this chain reaction. Now, as a king, if the priest tells me sit up, stand, go, come back, cannot marry, cannot divorce, cannot do this, cannot do that. If I'm a king, would I feel very happy that a pope or a king or a priest is telling me to do everything? No. It is frustrating. It is literally frustrating. And this is basically what happens in Europe also. In the early 15th or late 14th century, what will happen is that the kings will start to get frustrated. The kings get frustrated. And what they will basically do is that they will start to appropriate power, or what we call as consolidate power. The kings will start to consolidate power, and they will remove church's influence over them and consolidate power. And these kings were very aptly known as absolutist kings, or what we call as absolutist monarchies. Absolutist means that they started to take away power from the church and started to appropriate power in themselves, and therefore they had absolute power. So mostly these are called absolutist monarchies or absolutist monarchs. They were extremely frustrated by the way the king or the king was controlled by the church, or how the church used to interfere. So if I have to argue that the church's influence over the king went away, so the power of the church will go up or down from 100%. Will it go up or down? It will go down. So if our story started at 100%, and I'm just trying to quantify it for your understanding, by this action in which feudalistic system started to decline and the king started to appropriate power, what we see is that the church's authority, this is visible, church's authority is now 80%. Let's presume that it is minus 20%. This event, the decline of feudalism, was minus 20% for church's authority. Now, this 20% opening will allow something very interesting. Everybody's following me till this point. Any of the finer details are not important. Decline these, that, not important. When I'm not telling you something, I'm not telling it to you for a very specific reason. So be with me, follow what I'm telling you. Feudal system declines because of the king's frustration. There are multiple issues which have developed within feudalism itself. The king starts to appropriate power. With the rise of absolutist monarchies, feudalism will start to decline and church's authority will be reduced. There's much bigger part of a story which I'm not telling you. Crusades has nothing to do with this. That's a religious war that has nothing to do with this. Very straightforward. The church's authority has gone from 100 to 80%. Now the king doesn't really listen to the church. Okay. Now, if you are from PSI or optional, or sociology optional, or history optional, or if you know political theory, there were certain thinkers in Europe which were comparable to, for example, Aryabhatta, to Varamira, to Bhaskara. Can you give me their names? For example, to Kautilya. They are very important Indian thinkers, and they're in the ancient and early medieval period. Yes, Machiavelli, Plato, Socrates, not Voltaire, Aristotle, very good. Ptolemy, very good. Strabo, not Montesquieu, that's an Enlightenment thinker. Not Kant, Rousseau, again later. As of right now, we're basically talking about what are called Greek scholars. We have Plato, we have Socrates, we have, for example, Aristotle, we have Machiavelli. These are very, very, Herodotus, sure, why not? These are very, very important Greek thinkers. Now, if I remember correctly, and if you have any idea of it, I think the Greeks also argued that the earth was round, that they were basically picking up from a lot of things which the Indian scholars were talking about. And in a way, the Greek and the Roman scholars had a lot of understanding of the earth, which was quite nuanced vis-a-vis what the church knew. And if that is the case, then what happened? See, what happened was that with the rise of Christianity, all this literature, Aristotle, Plato, all this Greek literature was kept aside and made hidden by the church. So, these popes and these priests could dominate the understanding of Europe. And this 20% opening in the church's authority being taken away by the absolutist kings allowed for a very important, very important event, which is called the Renaissance. Bible itself didn't say that the earth is flat. Sure, Dhanya, that is true. But the priest who was dumb enough to read the Bible and then say it is flat, it is not the Bible which is the problem. It is the intermediary. It is always the intermediary. A lot of our scriptures never talked about sati, but we still had sati. Sati had no scriptural concept, but they still followed it. So it is always the religious intermediary who's the problem rather than the sacred book. So don't worry about that. We will discuss it when we'll talk about ancient and modern India. Don't worry about these things. Yes, it is not the canonical book. It is rather the problem. But the Bible does talk about what we call as the age of creation. It does not talk about evolution. But that is, I'm not here to teach you theology. I'm not here to teach you religion. I'm here to teach you history. Now, the point is the opening up of 20% of the way the church controlled society allowed for a very important event which is called Renaissance. Yes, Madhur, it is totally a part of it. But UPSC, you have to become an IS officer, not a theologian. So I am here to make you an IS officer. It is not Astha channel that I'm going to discuss religion with you here. So separate issue altogether. Sure, a lot of things are a lot of part of things. Understand this point. Be focused on what you want to do. So when I teach science and when I will teach you, for example, 6 schools of philosophy, we will not try to apply it on us. You are here to become a UPSC aspirant, not a constitutional lawyer, not an economist, not a historian, and not a theologian. You are here to become an IS officer. That is what my task is to. I will do it. Enlightenment is in my 18th century. After this, not before it. So always be clear of what you want to do. Because I know when religion, everybody is going to become emotional. Don't worry. Ancient medieval, I will teach you. Don't worry. Okay. As it is, this is not your own history. I really don't care about the Europeans too much. So let's talk about them generally. Now, Renaissance. When we talk about the Renaissance, the word Renaissance means rebirth or resurgence. See, the Renaissance is not a political movement. It is a cultural movement. Now, what happened was that because of the church's authority going away a little bit, in the Italian states, which is modern day Italy, what happened was that the people started to rediscover this Greek philosophy, this Greek knowledge, and there was a revival of Greek knowledge. Now, the Renaissance, which happened in Europe, from where have you heard the word Renaissance previously? Before world history, where have you heard the word Renaissance? Have you heard the word Renaissance before it? Yes, modern India. In what context? Very good. Socialist reform movement. The Indian Renaissance, Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Standard. Now, very simple. The word that Indian Renaissance, the original word is this, which is Renaissance. Renaissance means rebirth, resurgence, and it is a resurgence of Greek knowledge which was hidden by the church. Now, if I was standing in, for example, 1450, 1500, the church used to argue. Again, all of this is outside your syllabus. I'm coming till a point from which I will teach you and I will tell you from where it is relevant for the examination. Now, 1450, 1500, if I asked a priest who is important, the answer that the priest will give is only God is important. Man has no power. Man, unfortunately, women are ignored here automatically, but man has no power. We as humans are powerless. Divine intervention and divine power is everything. This is called scholasticism. This is called scholasticism. Scholasticism is a concept of education in which theology is very, very important, which is the study of religions. Study of religions. And according to a priest, according to the Pope, you and me have no power. Everything God. So when it came to art, when it came to architecture, when it came to literature, everything used to talk about God too much. Too much. Divine, 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 divine. Now the Renaissance changed this. The Renaissance changed this because what the Renaissance did was that the Renaissance revived Greek knowledge, and the Greek knowledge said, no, man also has power. We as human beings have the power to change nature. We as human beings have the power to think. And therefore, the Renaissance was a very important moment in European history because it created a new understanding which is called humanism and individualism. See, when you will go, when you choose your streams in school, they ask you, do you want to be commerce? Do you want to be science? Or you want to take arts or humanities? The word humanities comes from this word, humanities. One second. Story of humans, humanities. See, humanism is a new concept which developed in Europe, which argued that you and me are important, that an individual is important, and the overemphasis on God was taken away. The overemphasis on God was taken away. And very simply, now they started to teach vis-a-vis scholasticism, humanities, history, political science, sociology, anthropology. What are these? These are the stories or the study of humans. History, the study of your past. What we call as political science is study of polity, again created by humans. Sociology, study of society. Anthropology, study of cultures and tribes. Therefore, what the Renaissance does is that it creates humanism and individualism as two new ideas. And you already know the name of a very important humanist who changed the influence on art, literature, and architecture. And his name is Leonardo da Vinci. Da Vinci was actually a very important humanist. Da Vinci actually started to now paint humans. In architecture, humans started to become very, very important. Individuals became important. Now, the portraits, the architecture all became human centric, or you would have seen a very iconic painting in which man is, and there's a moment in which you see the hand of God and man meeting. It's a very iconic painting you would have seen, where a man is very simply lying down and is towards, or his hand is towards the sky, and from there God is also going down and trying to touch the hand of the human. That man and God imagery is very important because it humanizes God also. And therefore Da Vinci, Michelangelo became very, very important personalities who allowed for humanism to spread. So now there is a new ideology which has come up, which is called humanism and individualism. Now, if again we quantify the value of the church in society, again with the Renaissance, the power of the church will go up or down. I will bring everything together. Don't worry, you will understand why am I doing this. Again, it will go down. Very beautiful, very, very good. Very simply, because now the Greek knowledge has come through, these things will challenge the church. And if I again had to quantify, let's take it as a moment in minus 20%. And this is at 60% now. The power of the church is now at 60%. So it lost 20% because of decline of feudalism, and it has again lost 20% because of the Renaissance. So till this point, what I've done is very simply, I'm repeating myself. What I've done is that I've taught you what we call as feudalism. In feudalism, there is 100% control of the church over society, and the church has all the power it has. Thereafter, decline of feudalism happens because of absolutist monarchies. The kings start to become frustrated, and the church's authority becomes 80%. And with the decline of feudalism, what happens is there's a space for the revivalism of Greek knowledge, which we call as the Renaissance. And the Renaissance again takes another 20% out of it, and we get 60% control of the church. And very simply, why is Renaissance important? Two very important concepts. Renaissance introduces, because of Greek knowledge, humanism and what we call as individualism. And these two concepts are groundbreaking because they start to act and argue that man and men are important. Divine power is not everything. Does anybody have any issue till this point? If yes, I'll repeat this whole process again. If no, we can move forward. Yes or no? No problem? As it is, you don't have to learn this, you only have to understand it. Okay. No problem. Clearly understood. Nothing better. Great. Okay. Now the next event, which happens, how Greek text influencing, because Greek text had an understanding which was even before the church existed, which talked about man being important. So when you get new texts which talk about something which was before the prevailing Christian understanding, it will be influential. Understand this point. These are things which are happening parallel to each other. I'm simplifying it for you in that sense. Much nuanced cultural movement, but I'm giving you the basic gist out of it. Renaissance means rebirth, or what we call as resurgence. It's a Italian word. Okay. Now, the next event which happened after the Renaissance was a major event which we call as the Reformation. Now, to very simply put it, what the Reformation is basically is the Bhakti movement of Christianity. If you understand this, good enough, but I'll elaborate it for you. Bhakti movement means that Christianity never remained the same after Reformation. Because whilst this was an outside force which changed it, this was again an outside force which changed it. Reformation happened from within. And let's try to understand what is then Reformation. What is then Reformation? Now, imagine that we are living in, again, 13th, 14th century Europe. And the problem is that from the priest to the cardinal to the bishop, to the archbishop, to the pope. This bureaucracy is very elaborate. It's extremely elaborate. But what is very interesting about this is that the upper parts of the clergy, the upper parts of the clergy, they are extremely wealthy. So the whole Vatican City has been made, used to drink in gold and silver, enjoyed so much wealth, they had no idea what to do. So they were only making sculptures of God. Pope, archbishop, bishop, extremely wealthy. The church collects a tax, so it has a lot of power in its hand. On the other hand, the priests were in poverty. They were finding it very difficult to make ends meet. So whilst the upper clergy, the upper part was very, very wealthy, this is called the corruption within the church. This is called the corruption within the church. But there was one practice which was extremely shady within the papacy, or you want to call it within the clergy or within Christianity at this point of time. And it's called the sale of indulgences. And I'll give you a very simple example and you will automatically understand what it is. So I am a person who somehow killed a person. I murdered 3 people. So now I go to the church, I go to the priest, and I say to the priest, I have sinned. I have killed 3 people. 3 people have been killed. Madhur, I'm coming to what is Reformation. I'm making the context. First context is corruption within the church, which is extremely wealthy pope, archbishop, bishop, but at the lower levels, they are not very, very wealthy. Second is a major issue which is existing within the church, which is called the sale of indulgence. Try to understand what it is, what I'm explaining to you. So I have killed 3 people, and now I go to my priest and confess, I have killed 3 people. I have sinned. I want to do something about it. So like an insurance agent, the priest will say, what if I tell you that there is a certificate which you can buy, which will kill, or which will very simply wash off all your sin? And the person says, sure. He says 10,000 francs, for example. For 10,000 francs, I will give you a certificate that God himself forgived you. This is called sale of indulgence. Very simply, if I sin, I go to the church takes some money, they write a certificate and say, Sab mast hai, go, sin again, kill 3 more people, come back, we will give you another certificate. Very simply, this is called a very, 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 very corrupt practice of the church, wherein they were basically selling divine grace. That the grace of God, that the what we call as benevolence of God can be bought. So there is no justice, there's nothing. It's some basically your insurance policy. Okay, you've done something. Okay, I'll write a certificate. Give me some money. I'll write a certificate. This is how the church used to actually gain money also. There was a lot of money which was coming from the sale of indulgences. So sale of indulgence is nothing but a certificate of indulgence. If you have sinned, you can wash off all your sins by just buying a certificate. Nobody really has a problem in understanding this. It's a very simple, straightforward concept. Church gives you a certificate which says, no, you cannot be prosecuted because this person has paid us, and God himself has said, he came to us, called me and said, isko chhod do, this person should be left. He's given that 10,000 francs. So, no issue. Now, the point was that there was a person in the German states who started to hate this. Were people dumb to believe? Sure, why not? Why not? Europeans are not very smart. You will realize by the end of this discussion, they're not very smart. Don't worry. Americans are even more dumber than Europeans. Not very smart. Don't expect too much from them. So German states, there was a person called Martin Luther. And please, his name is Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. is a different person. That's a that is a black activist from America. So Martin Luther. Now, Martin Luther, he was frustrated by the practices of the church. That he was very simply frustrated by the sale of indulgence. He was frustrated by the poverty of the priests. The money which the sale of indulgence used to come used to go to the archbishop, bishop level. So very simply, Martin Luther was extremely frustrated by the church itself. He's a priest himself. And very simply, in a major moment of his frustration, he will write what is called the 95 thesis or thesis, and he will go and nail it on the wall of his own church. And basically, these were 95 grievances which he had against the church. Now, why Martin Luther is important? Because he is the one who protested. And because he protested, the church, because of the Reformation, will split up into two. One is called the Catholic Church. This is your original Orthodox Church, who used to sell the sale of indulgences. Whilst on the other hand, you will have what are called the Protestants. Protestants are basically Martin Luther. In France, there was a person called Calvin. Across Europe, there will be multiple priests who will protest, and they will create a new type of Christianity. They are not outside Christianity, new type of Christianity, which did not very simply base its understanding on this sale of indulgence or very bad type of understanding. Rather, they argued that working is important. Work ethic is very, very important. But the most important point was Protestant churches started to get influenced by humanism. So whilst in the Catholic Sunday school, they used to teach scholasticism, God is everything, God is everything, God is everything. The Protestant churches used to teach humans are everything. And humanism, which was developing since the Renaissance period, now started to get connected within the Protestant religion. Now, there is much bigger story to Protestantism, to Martin Luther. But for our purpose, the Reformation, priest is at the grassroots level, Pope is the leader of all Christians. For our purpose, the Reformation is single-handedly the biggest blow to the church. And here, close to 50 to 40% of the church's authority goes away. And if you remember, I started the story like this, that if we had 100% control under feudalism, we came to 80% because of the decline of feudalism. We came to 60% because of Renaissance. It is the Reformation which basically was the biggest blow to Christianity, because it split Christianity into two. Till today, there are two types of churches which you would have seen. it would say Catholic Church, and it would say, for example, Baptist Church, some other type of church. That is basically a Protestant church. Protestantism is a practice which exists within Christianity. They accept the same Pope, but they don't have the same practices. That is why I call it the Bhakti movement of Christianity. Bhakti movement forever changed Hinduism. Sufi movement forever changed Islam. Same way Protestantism was a product of Reformation changing Christianity. But for you and me, why is it important? Because it takes away a major chunk of the power. Yes, there are two types of priests now. You see, there are two types of churches today. There are basically three types of churches today. One I will introduce to you later. One is called Eastern Orthodox Church. That is the Russian church. Within Roman Catholic Church, there's one called Roman Catholic. That is the original Orthodox, the one which you see as the concept of sale of indulgence. And you will have a new Protestant church coming up with a new type of understanding with humanistic influences. So very simply, the way they interpret the Bible is different. That's the only thing. The Bible remains the same, the Pope remains the same, everything remains the same. The simple straightforward point is Reformation, it's not called Lutheran church, it's called Protestant church, because they're protesting, they call Lutheranism or Protestantism. So Protestant is a bigger word used for Calvins, Protestants, Zegots, multiples are there, but you don't have to remember them. Anglican in England, the German states, you have Luther. In France you have Calvin. In the Netherlands, Denmark sector, we have called Zegots. Totally different concept. Don't have to do that. The simple straightforward point is, for our purpose and understanding, Luther initiated the Reformation, which in turn led to the power of the church coming to 20 to 10%. Till this point, are we following it? Yes, Weber argues that the Protestant ethic was the capitalist ethic, because Protestantism argued about working for your livelihood, not to sit for divine intervention. Are we all clear till this point? Yes, one says God is supreme, the other one says God is supreme, but man is also important. Everybody who is here has to say yes or no. You have to tell me, are we clear with regards to this understanding? Because now comes the most important discussion. Then I will take a break and we'll come back. Okay. Yes, sir. Clear, sir. Very good, sir. Okay. Now, because of the church authority being at 30 or 20%, this created the context for the next set of events which happened in Europe. And the first most important event is called the Scientific Revolution, which started with the discovery or the development because of three very important people: Copernicus, Galileo, and Kepler. See, Copernicus was the first one, in a way, to argue that the earth was not flat, but the earth was a round sphere. He is also the one, again, don't have to learn this, he is also the one who introduced the concept of what we call as the heliocentric view of earth. The heliocentric view of earth is that the earth is not the center of the universe, but the sun is the center of the universe, and earth is one more object or celestial body which goes around the sun. Copernicus proposed it. Kepler added to this story by arguing about orbits and basically calculating the distance, revolution, rotation of the earth. But the most important personality who proved it and later was also prosecuted by the church also to some level was Galileo. Galileo was the one who developed the telescope. And the telescope proved the theory of Copernicus and Kepler. I'll tell you how. See, what Galileo did was that he found a star in the sky. Through his telescope, he noted the position of the star A. Now, according to the church, if I go after 6 months and look towards the sky, I will find this object A at where it is, or it will change. According to the church, it will remain the same. However, what happened was that Galileo showed that because the earth is moving relative to the sun and to itself, he found the star moved to point B, which basically proves the rotation of the revolution of the earth around the sun. Now, Copernicus, Galileo, and Kepler basically created or paved the way for the floodgates to open. They were prosecuted by the church, but they allowed the floodgates to open for multiple reasons. For example, people used to think that our body is magic. How does our body work? We don't know. But then came Harvey. He argued that no, there is a heart inside. He was the one who developed the blood pressure concept. Thereafter, there were multiple tests which were done on humans to show that there is an anatomy. There is a way. Yes, William Harvey, blood circulation. There is a way this body works. There are muscles. There are lungs through which we breathe. There's blood circulation to the heart. But the one who is seen as the father of modern sciences is a person who troubles a lot of you till today as engineers, or has troubled you in school, is Newton. Newton changed everything. Newton changed everything for a very simple reason. He changed everything for a simple reason because he argued that it is not God which intervenes in everything. It is not divine law which decides everything. It is rather natural law which does it, and his three laws. His three laws, which is that if a body is in rest, it will want to be in rest. If a body is in motion, it will remain in motion, which is basically moment of inertia. And is the most important, which is every action has equal opposite reaction. And what Newton proved was that everything had a logic behind it. Everything had a reason behind it. And with this, the church's authority more or less became zero over the knowledge system, and humanities and modern sciences now started to dominate. And with the rise of modern sciences came new navigation tools. And there were two very important tools which were developed based on modern sciences, which is the compass and the magnetic needle. Can anybody tell me? Compass, we know it shows north, south, east, west. What does the magnetic needle show you? Any idea? Magnetic needle, what does it show you? Very good, Shreyank. No, not direction. Not north, south, not north pole, south pole. It does not show direction. Very good, Priyanka. Very good, Mechri. Yes, it is the magnetic field of the earth. But by using that, what will it tell you? Magnetic needle tells you latitude. Are you in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere? See, magnetic needle aligns itself with the magnetism of the earth. So it will change its angle according to the latitude. So they were able to calculate that if it is at the pole, it will be totally flat. And then if you are at the what we call as equator, it will be fully straight. So the angle will tell you which latitude you are, and it will become totally other way if you are in the southern hemisphere. the dip, as it is called. Yes. Now, the simple straightforward point is, now we come to the fundamental question, and herein I'll give you a break also, is that I asked you a question in the beginning, that why is that in 1492 people had the courage to cross the Atlantic, and the reason was that by 1492 the Renaissance, the Reformation, the scientific revolution, and rise of modern sciences had allowed for the navigators, the explorers, and the people to have the courage to trust this science and venture into the sea. What I'm trying to argue for the past close to an hour is that don't take Christopher Columbus for granted. Don't take Vasco da Gama for granted. Don't take Bartholomew Diaz for granted. Diaz reached till Cape of Good Hope. The 1498 and 1499 and 1500 exploration of reaching India was also part of this larger project. But when Christopher Columbus actually ventured out to look for India, he actually by mistake crossed the Atlantic Ocean. He wanted to go something like this, but he wasn't able to. Rather, he went across the Atlantic, reached the Caribbean islands. He did not reach Americas, he reached the Caribbean islands. He reached there. He thought he had reached India. That is why the original inhabitants of these islands are called Red Indians. He said, India to lag raha hai, but their little bit complexion is a little bit too dark, and that is why it's called Red Indians. He thought it is India, but they are a little bit darker, little bit more reddish, so Red Indians. The simple straightforward point is the courage to cross the Atlantic came through this. The person, again, do not learn this table, but the person after which the whole American subcontinent or subcontinent is named after is a person called Amerigo Vespucci. Amerigo Vespucci, Amerigo America, he was the one who actually reached Brazil. He was the one who actually reached North America. And the one person who changed modern sciences and navigation for everyone was this person called Ferdinand Magellan. Magellan was the one who had the courage to go and circumvent the earth. He started in Portugal and reached back in Portugal and proved to everyone that the earth was round. Now, I will give you a break here. I'll come back to this point again. But till this point, did it make sense that how everything what I've taught you is related to each other? I'll give you a summary of this and then we'll move forward. If I have your permission, I want to give you a break here. Yes? Now do you get it? Why for the past 1 hour I've been talking about Renaissance, Reformation. All of these events are connected to each other because they take away the power of the church, which allows for these travelers to go across the Atlantic. They had the courage to do it. Previously, they did not. So let's take a break here. It is what, 7:38. We will come back at 7:50. 12 minutes I'm giving you. 10 minutes I give you, but 2 minutes I'm giving it to you more. At 7:50, when we come back, we take this story forward. And from this point forward, the discussion becomes important for the examination. So I'll see you at 7:50.